2025, 1:25 p.m. The flight deck is active, but there is no rush. Jets remain secured and quiet, their canopies flashing under the harsh midday sun. The deck crew move with the kind of rhythm that comes only from repetition and discipline. Yellow shirts give signals. Red shirts inspect safety pins. Green shirts work low along the catwalk edges. The wind over the bow is steady. The sea is manageable. Nothing in the sky suggests that anything unusual is about to happen. Below deck, inside the Combat Information Center, the radar picture looks routine until it suddenly does not. At 1:25 and 17 seconds, 3 faint returns appear at the far edge of the air search display. The signals are weak, not civilian, but strong enough to be noticed. The radar operator says nothing at first. He leans closer and adjusts the gain. The returns remain. 3 contacts, moving fast. No transponder. CIC to bridge, he says evenly. We have 3 fast-moving aerial contacts bearing 310, range long. On the bridge, nobody reacts with surprise. They have heard reports like this before. But tone matters, and this time the tone is different. The officer of the deck steps toward the console as the tracking data updates again. Speed is climbing, altitude is dropping. That changes everything. At 1:26 p.m., the 3 contacts draw into a tighter formation. This is not a loose transit and not a random crossing. Their path aligns with the carrier's projected course. They are not passing nearby. They are not veering away. They are coming straight in. No identification, no radio call, no explanation. On the flight deck, one of the green shirts slows in mid-step, sensing the shift before anyone says a word. Then the air boss cuts across the net, crisp and exact. Stand by, hold positions. Below deck, steel doors begin sealing in sequence. They do not slam. They close with controlled precision, and the sound moves through the hull like a low mechanical breath. Inside CIC, the picture becomes clearer. The radar now resolves sharper shapes, fast, military fast. The tactical action officer watches the timeline shrink. At their current speed, closest approach is only minutes away. Bridge CIC reports contacts accelerating. No IFF response. The captain is already present. He does not need to raise his voice. Set condition 3. No explanation follows because none is necessary. Across the ship, the words spread quickly. Condition 3. Key stations are manned. Defensive systems are not engaged, but they are ready. Sensors take priority. Logs begin rolling. This is the threshold between routine operations and something far more serious. At 1:27 p.m., the contacts descend again. Now they are low enough that their approach is no longer just a radar problem. At this altitude, intent begins to matter. Deck cameras tilt skyward automatically, sending live imagery to CIC. Blue sky, broken cloud, still nothing visible, but the radar picture is steady. One of the 3 contacts shifts slightly forward, offset to the right of the others. A probing move. A way to test reaction time. A way to test nerves. The ship does not alter course. The ship does not change speed. At 1:28 p.m., the first radio call goes out on guard frequency, standard and professional. Unidentified aircraft approaching U.S. Navy vessel, you are operating in international airspace. State your intentions. Nothing comes back. No tone. No acknowledgement. Only the soft hiss of an open channel. On deck, a jet blast deflector begins to rise. Not all the way, only enough to be ready. Crew members clear the nearby area with smooth practice movements. No one runs, no one panics. In CIC, passive electronic monitoring begins recording emissions, listening only, watching, not speaking. The contacts continue inbound. At 1:29 p.m., their speed reaches its peak. The lead contact drops even lower, settling into a profile that will make its presence unmistakable the moment it becomes visible. The distance is collapsing. CIC reports 3 contacts, tight formation. The captain studies the display without expression. This is not open aggression, not yet. But it is far from routine. Every part of the approach signals intent without full commitment. Pressure without escalation, a move designed to force a response. The ship gives none. At 1:30 p.m., the contacts are close enough that the deck crew feel the change in the air before they see anything at all. A faint vibration, a subtle shift in the wind. Still no fire control cue, no radar lock, only speed and unmistakable purpose. Then the captain breaks the silence. Log everything. Inside CIC, timestamps continue to roll. Bearing, speed, altitude, every second captured. Whatever this moment is about to become, it is no longer unseen. The test has started. No heavy signatures yet. Only speed, only intent. 1:32 p.m. The air picture tightens. Passive sensors finish separating noise from signal, and the uncertainty vanishes. The contacts now read clearly as military fast movers, with signatures far outside anything expected from civilian traffic. The identification comes back solid. 3 Russian military aircraft holding disciplined spacing, flying without transponders, and offering no cooperative identification. They are not off course. They are not wandering. They are exactly where they mean to be. Inside CIC, the tactical action officer acknowledges the update with a brief nod. The information moves to the bridge without extra commentary. The captain already understands the message. At 1:33 p.m., the formation changes. The lead aircraft drops lower and slips slightly off axis, angling toward the carrier's bow. The other 2 remain behind, spaced wide enough to observe and close enough to support. This is more than a simple pass. It is a deliberate setup. Bridge CIC, comes the report. Contacts now identified as Russian military aircraft. Altitude decreasing. Lead contact maneuvering aggressively. On the flight deck, personnel move away from exposed positions. Not because anyone has ordered panic, but because they understand the geometry. When aircraft come in low and fast, the margin for error narrows in an instant. Even without visible ordnance, the risk climbs quickly. A second radio call goes out, sharp and formal. Russian military aircraft. This is a United States Navy warship operating in international airspace. Maintain safe distance. The frequency remains open. No response. At 1:34 p.m., the lead aircraft fully commits. It drops below 500 feet, lowers its nose just enough to build speed, and aligns directly across the carrier's projected path. On deck, faces turn upward. Sunglasses flash in the glare. Someone mutters under their breath, the words lost almost immediately. Then the jet cuts across the bow at low altitude with unmistakable precision, close enough to feel, close enough to remove any doubt. The sound arrives a heartbeat later. Engine thunder rips over steel and water. Loose equipment vibrates. A violent gust tears across the deck. Inside CIC, no one reacts outwardly. The radar trace surges, then steadies. The aircraft pulls up, banks hard, and moves back toward the other 2. This is the moment everyone is watching closely. Status remains unchanged. No targeting cue, no fire control indication. But another detail appears on the board. ESM confirms track mode, the electronic warfare officer reports. Not a lock, but they're painting us. That matters. Track mode means they are measuring, recording, and studying how the ship responds under pressure. At 1:36 p.m., the second aircraft moves forward, echoing the first pass but staying higher and farther out. A different angle, a different look. The carrier does not turn. The carrier does not pick up speed. The bridge stays quiet. The captain stands with his hands behind his back, watching the feed. This is not about showmanship. It is about control. The ship's response, including its restraint, is already part of the exchange. Down in CIC, the timeline tightens again. The Russians are still not finished. At 1:37 p.m., the third aircraft enters the next phase. It descends just enough to bring itself clearly into view, then holds steady. No dramatic sweep, no theatrical move, just presence. Now, all 3 aircraft bracket the carrier's airspace, not crossing the boundary, but pressing hard against it. It is a textbook pressure tactic, close enough to provoke, careful enough to deny. Range steady, CIC reports. No visible weapons observed. Another radio call goes out. Same wording, same controlled tone, same silence in return. On deck, the crew glance skyward, then look away. They have been through enough to know that staring will not change anything. What matters now is below deck, in the sensors, the logs, and the discipline holding everything together. At 1:38 p.m., the lead aircraft climbs sharply, then eases power just enough to stretch the moment. It wants a reaction, a scramble, a launch, anything that can be pointed to later. It gets nothing. Instead, the ship records everything, every burst of radar energy, every altitude change, every frequency shift. The closer the aircraft come, the more clearly their signatures take shape. Speed patterns, emissions, habits, routines. The provocation is loud. The answer is silence. At 1:39 p.m., the formation loosens. Not a retreat, a repositioning. The aircraft widen their spacing and arc back into a broader pattern. They have made their point. They tested the boundary, and the boundary held. The captain speaks again, calm and even. Maintain course, maintain posture. The bridge acknowledges. In CIC, the operators keep recording. The encounter is not over, but its shape is changing. This was never about open conflict. It was about learning how far they could push without stepping over the line and what response they would draw. What they got was discipline, restraint, and time. The sky is still tense, but the momentum has started to shift. At 1:40 p.m., the lead aircraft cuts across the carrier's forward quarter once more. It is not flying as low as before, but it is still moving fast enough to shake the air around the ship. The pressure wave rolls across the deck, snapping a few loose straps tight. On the bridge, nobody shows a reaction. Below deck, though, the ship is responding with exact precision. Radar returns are being matched against passive detections. The timing between emissions is logged down to the second. Patterns are starting to take shape. How quickly the aircraft react to distance, how often they change altitude, how they space themselves when no one pushes back. This is no longer observation alone. It is careful collection. At 1:41 p.m., the Russian aircraft tighten their orbit. They do not come directly overhead. Instead, they stay just far enough out to watch and just close enough to remain inside the ship's awareness envelope. They are studying reactions without realizing they are being studied just as closely. Bridge CIC comes the update. Continuing passive collection, no change in defensive posture. The captain gives a single nod. The bridge stays quiet. The restraint is intentional. Active systems would announce themselves. A launch would raise the stakes. Silence keeps the advantage exactly where the ship wants it. At 1:42 p.m., one of the aircraft briefly changes modes from search to track, then back again. It is only a flicker, easy to miss unless you are watching for it. Track mode spike logged, the electronic warfare officer says. Short duration. That brief moment becomes another point on the record, another signature added to the growing profile. At this distance, very little stays hidden. The Russian pilots likely believe they control the scene. They have closed the distance, commanded attention, and visually dominated the air around the ship. What they have not done is force a response. And without that response, the exchange remains on American terms. At 1:43 p.m., the formation stretches wider. One aircraft drifts farther out, taking an overwatch role, while the other two keep pressure on the ship from separate angles. It is coordinated and clearly rehearsed, which makes the data even more useful. Every move reveals something: doctrine, training rhythm, who leads, who follows, how quickly they adapt when nothing changes. In CIC, analysts mark each second of the timeline. No alarm, no confusion. At 1:44 p.m., the ship's passive systems are saturated with information, not overloaded, simply full. The picture is now rich, sharp, and complete. The Russian aircraft have revealed far more than they intended. Their radar behavior, heat profile, spacing, and reactions under pressure are all being documented, stored, and passed through secure channels well beyond the horizon. This is where the real advantage lies. Not in steel, not in firepower, in information. The captain leans toward the officer of the deck and speaks quietly. Continue logging, no change. Aye, sir. Above the deck, the aircraft keeps circling, still close, still loud, still confident. They seem to think the carrier is simply waiting them out. In reality, the carrier already has what it came for. At 1:45 p.m., the first subtle signs appear. The aircraft widen their distance slightly. One climbs a little. Nothing dramatic, just enough to suggest the pressure phase is fading. They have tested the boundary. They have delivered their message. What they do not realize is that the encounter is no longer about presence. It is about what they have already exposed, and they have exposed everything. At 1:46 p.m., the third aircraft slips slightly out of plane with the others. It is not a withdrawal, more like a reassessment. Its nose angles a few degrees away from the carrier's axis. That is the clue. They are done testing. Now they are checking the result. The ship remains unchanged. No turn, no speed adjustment, no launch activity. The flight deck stays calm, almost detached. The message is unmistakable, even without words. You did not move us. Inside CIC, the timeline is already being assembled into a complete picture. Every maneuver is matched to its timestamp. Every emission is linked to behavior. The analysts do not guess, they compare. Passive collection complete, the electronic warfare officer says quietly. Pattern consistent. At 1:47 p.m., one of the Russian aircraft climbs again, this time cleanly and with purpose, pulling out of the low-altitude pressure profile. The roar begins to fade. The air over the deck settles. The flight deck crew notice the change immediately, not because they relax, but because the tension itself has shifted. It is the kind of shift that tells experienced people the key moment has passed. Even then, no one speaks unnecessarily. One final radio call goes out from the bridge, calm and unchanged in tone. Russian military aircraft, you are approaching unsafe distance to a U.S. Navy vessel. Recommend increasing separation. This time, there is no dramatic pause, no reply. Only emptiness on the frequency. At 1:48 p.m., the formation begins to pull away. Not abruptly, not with urgency, just enough to place distance where there was none before. The aircraft level their wings, widen their spacing, and climb as they move off. In CIC, the range begins to grow. Contact's increasing distance, the radar operator confirms. The captain lets out a slow breath, almost too subtle to notice. This is the moment that matters most. no collision, no escalation, no loss of control, only a measured ending. At 1:49 p.m., the airspace around the carrier begins to open again. The Russian aircraft are still visible on the sensors, but their positioning is no longer confrontational. The pressure angle has fallen away. They made their pass, got their look, and now they are heading out. The bridge stays quiet until the captain finally speaks. Maintain course. Maintain condition 3. The officer of the deck answers immediately. The ship remains exactly as it is. Steady, controlled, unaffected. Below deck, the logs keep running. Data packets are assembled and encrypted. Everything collected over the past 20 minutes is already moving beyond the ship, flowing through secure networks to people who do not need drama to recognize its value. At 1:50 p.m., the Russian aircraft turn farther away, noses pointed outward now, climbing with purpose. The sound fades as the distance grows. On the flight deck, a few crew members give the sky one last glance, then go back to work. The jets remain secured. Deck activity resumes. No announcement is made because none is needed. The encounter never turned physical. No combat systems were brought online, no aircraft were launched, no alarms sounded beyond what the moment required. And yet the balance still changed. What began as a test of composure ended as a quiet confirmation of control. The Russian aircraft came close enough to be seen, close enough to be felt, and close enough to be studied. And in doing so, they revealed more than they collected. At 1:52 p.m., CIC confirms it. Contacts now on outbound vectors. No further approach expected. The captain gives a small nod. That'll do. The ship continues on its original heading, cutting through open water exactly as it had before the encounter unfolded around it. From a distance, it might seem as though nothing happened. No public footage, no official statement, no dramatic maneuver left behind for replay. But inside the ship, everyone understands what really took place. This was never about winning a direct showdown. It was about showing that the situation was never theirs to dictate. And in that contest, the result is already clear. At 1:55 p.m., the last trace of engine noise disappears completely. The wind settles back into its normal rhythm. The sea looks no different than it did before. If you were not paying close attention, you might miss that anything happened at all. That is exactly the point. There will be no press release, no video package for the public, no remarks delivered to cameras. The ship does not need any of that. In modern naval operations, silence often sends the strongest message. The Russian aircraft tested distance. They tested timing. They tested composure. What they met was discipline. The carrier never turned, never surged ahead, never showed uncertainty. It held its line, not to make a statement, but because it had nothing to prove. Everything that mattered was already being captured. At 1:58 p.m., the Combat Information Center completes the event log. The timeline is finished from first contact to final separation. Every second is accounted for. Event logged, CIC reports. The bridge acknowledges. The ship continues on the same course, calm and predictable, moving through open water with the same posture it held before the first radar return appeared. Nothing about the mission has changed, but something else has. This exchange may never become a headline, but it will remain in databases, briefing rooms, and future assessments. The next time these aircraft approach another ship somewhere else, someone will remember what was learned here. That is how this works. Not through spectacle, through memory. At 2:01 p.m., Condition 3 is eased. Stations stand down in sequence, not rushed, not casual, simply complete. The carrier settles fully back into routine operations, its massive systems humming beneath layers of steel, discipline, and procedure. Above, the sky is empty again. Below, the record remains. The encounter did not end with force. It ended with understanding, one side knowing exactly what it had revealed, the other knowing exactly what it had gained. And that understanding will travel far beyond this stretch of ocean. Because in modern naval power, success is not always measured by what you stop. Sometimes it is measured by what you allow to leave, and what you learn when it does.